the state Supreme Court. And I am thrilled to have on as another one of my good friends and someone I haven't talked to in a while, my friend Charlie Giroux, who has thrown his hat in the ring for the Republican nomination for governor of this great, great Commonwealth. And I was at Charlie's announcement, and it was pretty impressive. Charlie's an impressive fellow, and I'm really glad that he can come on and talk about his campaign, and also about it's getting a little crowded out there in the GOP primary race. Hey, Charlie, how you doing? Almost Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Christine, and Merry Christmas. It's great to be with you on the air, and it's been a while since we've seen each other. In fact, I think it was at the announcement of my candidacy for governor when I last said hello in person, but it's great to say hi on the air.
It was. We've been like ships passing in the night. You've been out in southeastern PA a bunch of times since then, kind of your old stomping grounds, because you're from southeastern PA, right?
I am. I grew up there and went to school there, including right through the greatest law school in America, where both you and I attended.
Wildcat! Woohoo! Woohoo! I wanted to very, very quickly, origins story here. I had spent a good part of the last hour talking about the death of Sarah Weddington, who had argued Roe versus Wade. And, I never celebrate necessarily anyone's death, but as I had said to a lot of people yesterday, in fact, I found it highly ironic that Sarah died on the Feast of the Holy Innocents, which, those of us in the pro-life movement, and I know that you are pro-life, always recognize as sort of, a symbolic recognition of the of abortion, of the death of innocent unborn children. And so I know you've talked about this on air before. You are you were adopted. You were give us a little bit of the origin story and just a really, really quick take on what the death of Sarah Weddington meant to you.
Yeah, well, let me just go back and reference the story that you began there, Christine. Although I grew up in Pennsylvania, started out my life in southeastern Pennsylvania, I wasn't born here. I was born in a slum in Brazil, and my birth mother realized that she couldn't take care of me. So rather than choosing the horrible atrocity of abortion, she chose adoption. Yeah. And some American missionaries adopted me, brought me to Pennsylvania, and I grew up here and had the opportunities and the tremendous blessings that life has given me, because life is a blessing. And as you know, I'm very committed to the pro-life movement, have been for many, many years. I put my money where my mouth is. I hear a lot of candidates say, I'm pro-life, and I'm glad to hear that. But the question always is, what have you done?
That's right.
And so, I can point to a lot of things that I've done through the years to protect the sanctity of human life. And yeah, the death of Miss Weddington, we don't celebrate the death of anyone, but it is, I guess the best word is ironic that she passed away on the Feast of the Holy Innocents.
Yeah.
And what's terribly troubling to me, Christine, is that Josh Shapiro, against whom I'm going to run in the fall, is somebody that's out there saying we need more abortions. He's literally said that we need to have expanded access to abortion. It used to be that the left said they wanted abortion to be, quote unquote, safe, legal, and rare. It was none of those. No. But they always emphasized that they wanted it to be rare. And I think that most Pennsylvanians, even those that consider themselves, quote unquote, pro-choice, want abortion to be rare. But here you've got Josh Shapiro, who has taken the radical position of saying we ought to have more abortions, not less.
You're absolutely right, and I'm really glad that you pointed it out, and I'm glad that we've pivoted to Josh Shapiro because, first of all, I will vouch for your pro-life cred. I know what you've done. We actually met the very first time on the steps at the Capitol at the March for Life in, I think it was maybe 3 years ago in June, and you have been a very visible spokesperson, advocate for the unborn. And it is a lot of, and God bless anyone in, from any walk of life who's out there talking about the dignity of the unborn. But it's a very easy thing to talk about it when you're among friends, and then to sort of, I see a lot of people just sort of back down, and they downplay that particular aspect of their campaign or their career or what have you, because it's just not, it doesn't give them any purchase in secular society. But you have had the courage to do that, and I think that really needs to be acknowledged. But with respect to Shapiro, you're absolutely right. Beyond the fact that he is stepping out, manipulating, violating, I think, in many ways, his oath of office to be a nonpartisan chief law enforcement officer for all of the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, he has become a partisan hack, a partisan attack dog. And it's very upsetting. I follow him on Twitter. I follow him on Facebook. And it's one long advertisement for abortion rights. And it's truly disturbing. So when you do run against him in the general, I hope that is made a large part of your campaign to point out the hypocrisy of this individual.
Well, it will be. And as I said in my campaign kickoff, Christine, if we won't stand up for the most defenseless, the unborn children, who will we fight for? And this really is a fight. And let me say this about Josh Shapiro. When he announced his candidacy, the day that he did it, I called on him to resign his office, because you simply cannot do both jobs at the same time. I run a small business, Christine, a really small business. I took a leave of absence from my little company in order to run for governor. I've got to be in every corner of the Commonwealth at every wake and wedding. And in order to do that, I can't fulfill my responsibilities to my little company. So I took a leave of absence. Josh Shapiro touts himself as the state's chief law enforcement officer, although I don't think he's ever been in a courtroom.
Never.
And runs a gigantic law firm, which is the Office of Attorney General, and yet says I can run all around Pennsylvania taking a taxpayer's check every single day and run for governor. It simply can't happen. And sadly, only one other Republican candidate for governor has joined me in calling for Josh Shapiro to resign. I think you can kind of guess as to why some of them don't want to do it. But these folks that are running for governor of Pennsylvania on the taxpayer's nickel really ought to be ashamed.
No, I agree. I think, it's so obvious on its face. You're an attorney, res ipsa loquitur, our favorite Latin phrase. The thing speaks for itself. You cannot be a neutral, unbiased arbiter of the rights of individuals in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania if you are actively not just working against them, but slandering them. I mean, I read some of his press releases and some of his PR, and there is such hostility and animus toward Republicans in general, conservatives, Republicans, he sort of conflates both of them, but conservatives, Republicans, people who don't support him. And it's, as an attorney, I find it to be highly unethical. I keep wondering when the Pennsylvania Bar Association, when the judicial board is going to get into this, not the judicial board, excuse me, the disciplinary board is going to weigh in and have some kind of pronouncement about this. I don't hold out much hope for that, but it's just extremely unseemly for him to be remaining in his position. We used to complain about Kathleen Kane, rightfully so, that there were ethical violations in her office. But I think this dwarfs what Kathleen Kane did.
Yeah, it really does. And I mean, the whole thing with Shapiro and his rhetoric, and you correctly point out that he is on the far, far left of even the Democratic Party today, which takes some doing, I might say.
Yeah.
And as I've told folks across Pennsylvania, as bad as Tom Wolf has been, and his administration has been a disaster, 4 years of Josh Shapiro, and we'd be looking back at the Wolf administration as the good old days, because Josh Shapiro is far more progressive, quote unquote, far more out to the left edge of the philosophical playing field. His rhetoric is matched by his actions. I mean, he's taken on the Little Sisters of the Poor, for crying out loud.
Yeah, who sues nuns? Who sues nuns?
And he's been the hatchet man for Tom Wolf's arbitrary and capricious actions last year with his lockdowns and shutdowns and destruction of our economy and keeping our kids out of school and keeping us locked up in our homes, et cetera. That's the record of Josh Shapiro. That's the record I'm going to run against. But as you correctly pointed out, Christine, in a very, very fine article you wrote after my kickoff, our campaign is about hope. It's about a future of optimism. It's about a future of growth. It's about a future of opportunity for every person in Pennsylvania and a future of prosperity for all of us.
I like that, Charlie. I think that's, we've come through two very dark years. I did not expect at the end of 2021 to still be wearing a mask, to still be having people tell me to stay away from them, 6 feet away from them, vaccine mandates, children, double the suicide rate, depression. I didn't expect that. I think that there was huge mismanagement. We have one particular party that's been in the majority in power now for an entire year, and we are worse off now in many ways, I think emotionally and psychologically and mentally, than we were at the beginning of this pandemic. So I think hope is extremely important, in whatever area that we can get it. I wanted to ask you, there is the field, the GOP field is becoming crowded, whereas, well, not crowded, but there are obviously more candidates jostling for positions on the Republican side than there are on the Democrat side, which leads me to believe, obviously, that Josh Shapiro is going to be the anointed, the crown prince for the Democrats, that no one is going to run against him. So do you think... how problematic is this for you and for other Republican candidates that you're really going to have to vie for space and attention among yourselves, whereas Josh is able to basically just sort of coast until the general?
Well, you used the proper word. It's crowded, Christy. It's not getting crowded. It is crowded. I mean, there are 13, 14, 15 Republican candidates. I happen to think that's a good thing. I think competition yields better products. I think the competition for the Republican nomination will be good for not only the party, but for the conservative philosophy that so many of us bring to the table. And it's going to point out a real contrast between the mainstream views of the Republican nominee, which I hope will be me and I believe will be me, but faced off against Josh Shapiro, who is a far left activist who wants to be president. And guess what, Christine? The good news is, as you and an immigration lawyer know, I can't be president. So I'll be working for the people of Pennsylvania, not for my own personal political ambitions.
I love it. I love it. Great. Charlie, I wish we had hours and hours to talk, and maybe we'll do a podcast or something. But in any event,
I'd love that. Anytime.
I wish you the most wonderful of New Years. When I'm back on here, I hope to have you back on. And we will talk soon. Be well and have a very safe and healthy new year.
Thank you so much, Christine. Real quickly, it's G-E-R-O-W. It's a tough name to pronounce, so a lot of folks don't say Giroux. It's G-E-R-O-W, and it's Charlie for F-O-R, governor.com, charlieforgovernor.com, if anybody wants to get in touch with me. charlieforgovernor.com, and that's Giroux, G-E-R-O-W. And by the way, I'm learning Portuguese in honor of your ancestral home. Bom dia. Tudo bem. Tudo bem.
Tudo bem. All right. Take care, Charlie.
Be well.
This is Christine Flowers.